The fighting French arrive in Corsica. First pictures from the island which Frenchmen and their Empire troops have liberated. It is the pattern of things to come in France herself. While the taking of Corsica brought about a rift between General de Gaulle and General Giraud, the difference lost prominence in the success of the expedition. Moroccan Goumiers were mainly employed in the landing. Clansmen of the Berber race with a tradition of being the fiercest fighters in the world. Men who declined to remove their turbans in favor of steel helmets. Patriots have adopted the original arms of Corsica on their flag. Outside the village of Patrimonio, light mortars are used to dislodge the Germans. Typical demolition work carried out by the retreating Nazis, leaving behind a smashed Mark VI before hastening in retreat to Bastia. The Patriots of Corsica rose like a disciplined army when their appointed hour arrived. The birthplace of Napoleon shook off its oppressors and literally led the liberating army to victory. The third largest island in the Mediterranean is British-owned Cyprus, lying athwart the enemy's route to Syria and the east. Only about 400 miles from Crete, the island's garrison force is continually being strengthened by the addition of Cypriots, recruited from its population of over 300,000 people. British Army instructors, responsible for their training, are building up a fighting force capable of resisting any attack if and when the time comes. The experience of Crete demands that every man should be able to handle automatic weapons of all kinds. The immediate future of Cyprus will be worth watching. Another island, but a possible stepping stone to bigger things. Approximately 350 miles away from German-occupied Crete, Imperial troops arrive at Cyprus, the British island in the eastern Mediterranean. Lying off the Syrian coast, the island is of immense strategic importance, and the work of strengthening its defenses goes on every day. Our cameraman in the Middle East sends us these pictures of activity as men, motor transport and equipment arrive at one of the ports on the island. Much of the island is rocky, but in the central plains, such as here, engineers, assisted by local labor, are setting new guns into their emplacements. Much of the work is done without modern equipment, but the job is expertly done nevertheless. Any German attack on Cyprus will indeed prove a hazardous adventure. Since our last Malta convoy story, other cameramen have returned, bringing with them more pictures of the colossal sea and air fight which went on without pause for 3 days. One newsreel man was aboard the ill-fated carrier Eagle for part of the voyage. It was from the Eagle and other ships like her that Fleet Air Arm pilots took off to break up the waves of enemy aircraft flung against the freighters on their way to succor gallant Malta. As U-boats closed in, the escort vessels went to work with depth charges. You've read about Bomb Alley. Now see for yourself what this hell spot is like. From south of Sardinia through the Sicily Narrows, the convoys have to run the gauntlet, traveling as fast as the slowest ship, and all the time subjected to every form of attack. The sea boils under the hail of falling shrapnel and spouts great columns of water as bombs rain down from Stuka's Ju-87s and 88s. While Axis aircraft open their bomb doors over the convoy, the sky is ripped open by every gun in the escort. Sharp turn to starboard, hot steel hisses into the Mediterranean, and out of the blue a stick of bombs plunges into the sea wide of the mark. closes in around the ships, new attacks develop. The darkness is pierced by vicious stabs of gunfire. The Chicago pianos, as they nickname the pom-poms, pumping out great streams of tracers. Any plane flying into that curtain of deadly fairy lights will behold like a colander. Suddenly on the skyline, an angry red glow tells of a casualty in the convoy's ranks. Part of the price of daring, part of the cost which has to be paid for Malta's survival. Fire at sea is a terrible thing. An awful night gives place to morning light, revealing a scene which must forever remain a monument to the gallantry and devotion to duty of the ununiformed men whose only badge of service is the letters MN, worn in the lapels of their jackets. Spitfires from Malta. Out from the island fortress they come to give added protection. 66 German planes were blown out of the sky. Malta's lifeline is still intact. Into the harbor there sails a battered but proud company of ships. Wounded but fighting Malta looks down on the battle-scarred convoy from Gibraltar. From their shattered homes, the George Cross Islanders flock down to the docks to help unload the precious cargoes. Men, women and children banding together to rush the supplies from the bomb-battered ships to the underground stores. Soon there will be the return journey. Convoy duty works both ways, and these are the men who see to it that it does. Eastward across the Mediterranean and Malta bound. The convoy, which recently fought its way to the George Cross Island, sailed under the protecting guns of British battleships and cruisers, aircraft carriers and destroyers. Squadrons of fighter aircraft flew high above cargo ships and escort. Over 50 ships in a column 10 miles wide. A mighty armada hurrying to the island fortress. Early in the action, the aircraft carrier HMS Eagle was torpedoed. Fortunately, the casualties were not heavy. The wounded were brought ashore shortly after the great vessel sank. Her loss was a severe blow. After being issued with clean clothing and feeling a lot more comfortable, the survivors attend a pay parade. Each man has some shore leave coming to him, and for that, they need a bit of dough. It's right, sailor. You can't trick the paymaster. Yes, these are the men of the gallant old Eagle. God bless them. Now for the newsreel story of the three-day battle at sea. The whole operation was under the command of Vice Admiral Seifert. From the first moment the signals of approaching trouble were exchanged, the men leapt to their action stations, and with their anti-flash gear and helmets clamped on, the gun crews fought off attack after attack. The sky and sea in Bomb Alley was patterned with shell and bomb bursts. The water boiled like molten lava, and the sky became pockmarked with acrid powder fumes and flying steel. Out of the sky came Stuka dive bombers. As Commander Kimmins told us, the Jerrys were sending in their first 11. Ju-88s, torpedo droppers and bombers hurled themselves at the freighters, sailing stubbornly forward through a boiling sea, while their escort ships fought with every gun. Destroyers were always slipping about and shaking the convoy with depth charges. U-boats were being fought as well. In this hell at sea, 66 German aircraft were accounted for by our gunners and fighter pilots. Bloodshot and weary eyes scanned the awful scene as dusk fell. There was rarely a peaceful moment. For hour after hour, the gunners pumped streams of tracers at the constantly attacking aircraft. shipping casualties were being sustained both among the escort vessels and cargo ships. In these brilliant excursions into a landlocked sea, ringed on all sides by the enemy, losses are bound to occur. But Malta must and will be supplied. This is how it's done. The nights afforded little rest. U-boats became more daring, bombers had still to be fought, and through it all the merchantmen ploughed their way towards Malta. The morning hours saw a scene to fill the heart. On battle-scarred ships, gunners, wearied by hours of fighting, snatched a few minutes' rest as the island's coastline loomed on the horizon. Another Malta convoy was coming in. Rear Admiral Burrows, who commanded the light forces and close escort, went aboard HMS Nelson to visit Vice Admiral Seifert at the close of operations. Britain salutes these gallant men. The men of the Malta convoy are at prayer, giving thanks to God for a safe deliverance from the perils which face those who serve at sea. Out from Gibraltar head British ships, British seamen and British sinews of war for Malta. It is the eve of the Battle of the Convoys, an action in particular, yet all part of the hard and costly toil, which is the everyday lot of the men who fight in the Mediterranean. You will remember how two large convoys were recently involved, one going east from Gibraltar to Malta, and the other west from Alexandria to Tobruk and Malta. For over 3 days and nights, it was a strenuous fight against Axis warships, submarines, dive bombers, torpedo planes, and heavy bombers. Depth charges were dropped as the undersea attackers sought their victims. Everything that Malta needs is carried to her across the seas. The route to the George Cross Island lies through hundreds of miles of dangerous water, where sky and sea fill with engines of destruction, where every mile is fought for by British seamen, airmen, and in fact everyone engaged in the task of getting supplies through. The life of any ship may hang on the trigger finger of one man. Good shooting accounted for many enemy planes. Here's one shot out of the sky to end up in a cloud of smoke as the tanks burst. Attacks by 300 enemy aircraft were fought off by the Navy, the RAF, and the Fleet Air Arm. Meanwhile, to the west, the attacks on the Alexandria convoy were being met. Every man knew the enemy would make tremendous efforts to stop it. Losses there were bound to be. But the men set about their perilous enterprise, and as the bombers came over in waves, put up a terrific screen of fire as bombs fell all about them. And here's how one ship in the convoy, damaged in the engagement, set to work on the hand capstan in true old Navy style, while a fiddler beat out a jig for the time. Here now is the scene as the vessels escorting the convoy from Gibraltar lay a smoke screen around the merchantmen as protection from the main Italian battle fleet which had ventured out. What happened to Mussolini's warships at the hands of the British and American airmen is a long story, but they knocked them about so badly that what were left hacked off back to Taranto. By now, every available Axis plane was thrown into the battle. Once again, the sky was split open by anti-aircraft shell fire as the convoy held doggedly to its course. Here comes an Italian torpedo carrier right overhead, losing height as tracer bullets rip into it. That burst of gunfire did get him. Here he goes in a death dive into the water. After long days of almost continuous fighting, the Battle of the Convoys begins to burn itself out. Men who have had little or no time to think of food snatch a hasty meal. The cargo they have brought us cost a price. Men have died, ships have gone. It's the same with all seaborne supplies, and we should never forget it. The British Isles and Malta both live on the precious contents of our merchant ships. Malta knows well what efforts go into its bringing. Every day, every hour, the people of Malta thank God for the British Navy and the mercantile marine. But do all of us? The colourful island of Malta, which in other times was a happy hunting ground for holiday cruises and ocean-going liners, is now gallantly living up to Disraeli's description, the little military hothouse. Her streets now echo to the terrific gunfire put up by the anti-aircraft defences and the scream and crash of bombs as Italian and German aircraft attack the mighty atom of the Mediterranean. Headquarters of the British Mediterranean Fleet, Malta is a powerful stronghold and is giving a magnificent account of herself. Up to the present, the British dependency has stoutly withstood well over 500 air raids. From their shelters, many hewn out of solid rock, the heroic Maltese emerge to survey the wreckage of their houses and buildings. This is culture, according to the beast of Berlin and the jackal of Rome. The 95-square-mile island fortress has suffered much, but she can take it. And by heaven, she can hit back. A symbolic introduction to two stories of the RAF. In Malta, Squadron Leader Lynch, an American commanding a Spitfire squadron, has just shot down the 1,000th enemy aircraft destroyed in air combat from the island. Fighter squadrons based on Malta are celebrating the occasion as they strike at Italy and her islands with increasing vigor. Linked with this splendid record is the triumph of Biggin Hill, the RAF aerodrome in Kent. Here are pilots and ground crews of the wing responsible for an equally resounding success. They too have reached and passed the 1,000 mark. The problem at Biggin Hill is who shot the 1,000th plane down, Squadron Leader Charles of Saskatchewan or Commandant Rene of Paris.
What I got to decide is who shot the 1,000th Hun. Who shot first of you two?
Well, geez, I don't know.
Did you see anything, sir?
No, well, it's so close, as I say, I don't know what happened. I suggest you split it.
Well, sir, what do you think? How are we going to solve this problem?
I think it's the fairest way. Yes, split it.
Well, boys, what about it, eh?
That's okay.
Come on, shake hands.
So the Morris Canadian and Frenchman share the credit and the sweepstake. Admiralty reports that convoys have passed successfully through the central Mediterranean, despite attempted enemy attack. Those are the words of a recent Admiralty communique, which we can now bring to life by pictures received from our cameramen aboard. It goes on to say, the enemy made great efforts to inflict serious loss by employing both aircraft and surface forces, but the only contact which the enemy succeeded in making was by aircraft. This is the attack, which maybe you found it hard to visualize when you read those words. This is the day-long contest between shell and bomb, ship and plane, which was fought out in a welter of flying steel, and which you learnt about in a paragraph in the papers or on the radio. This is war. What else does that communique say? It says, 2 merchant ships were damaged and had subsequently to be sunk by our forces. The remainder safely reached their destination. And the reason why they did so was because every man aboard fought like hell. They shot down 5 enemy planes for certain, with 4 others severely damaged. They've done a lot more shooting since then, and there's plenty more to be done before it's all over. Day and night, these attacks on our convoys continue. This brings us to one of the biggest assaults made by the enemy in recent months. The great naval battle of Palm Sunday approaches. The fight in which Rear Admiral Vian of Cossack fame completely foiled Italian attempts to destroy another convoy. Steadily the convoy sails on, while the escorting warships are on the alert for a vastly superior enemy force known to be in the vicinity. Again, Axis bombers come in to attack after an Italian naval squadron is sighted on the horizon. This time, bad weather accompanies the raiders, and a high sea runs as bombs fall into the turbulent waters. Now comes that David and Goliath battle, where our destroyers close in on the Italians with a torpedo attack. Round the convoy is laid a heavy smoke screen, obscuring it from the enemy, a screen into which the Italians dare not penetrate. Through this dense blanket of smoke, our 1 6-inch gun cruiser and the destroyers make fast sorties, one of them later returning to report that she had scored a hit with a torpedo on the 35,000-ton Italian battleship Littorio. The Littorio sailed out with the first Italian fleet ever to seek combat with British warships and ran into Admiral Philip Vian's force, which smashed off 2 heavy attacks and sailed on without loss of a ship. By now the weather had reached gale force, and when the naval action was finally broken off with another Mussolini failure to chalk up, the Luftwaffe swept in once again. During this new series of attacks, 1 ship in the convoy was hit and subsequently sank. 1 destroyer was also hit, but was able to reach harbor. It might be opportune at this moment to give a thought to the cameramen who kept turning during the heat of these attacks, so as to bring to the screen the living story of this great sea and air battle. On the Tuesday, 3 days after the opening of the engagement, the enemy renewed his air attack, but without inflicting any further damage. Admiral Vian's warship successfully fought off repeated dive-bombing attacks as his squadron made for Alexandria, while the convoy and its escort sailed nearer and nearer its destination. Let us quote now the Rear Admiral signal to his force after the battle. "By your endeavor," he said, "the Italian fleet failed to make contact with the convoy, nor did the Axis air forces damage any ship in it until off Malta, notwithstanding the great scale of the attack. Above all, Malta has received stores vital to the island's defense." The arrival in harbor is a moment of splendid excitement. From ships lying at anchor comes the heartwarming note of ship sirens blown in welcome, and the cheers of seamen and the people who live in that heroic island. By superb leadership, Admiral Vian successfully concluded one of the most daring and audacious actions of the war. A prolonged fight won by a small British force against great odds.
Presenting the truth to the free peoples of the world. These are the first newsreel pictures of a new kind of warplane operating from Britain. American-built Mustangs of the RAF Army Cooperation Command. They have already been in action against the enemy, mainly in low-flying attacks across the Channel, but their chief function, of course, is to be support for the Army. In appearance, the Mustang is rather like a Messerschmitt with its square-cut wingtips, but the train spotter will easily pick out distinctive features. Things you'd really be interested to know about the Mustang we can't tell you, not because of careless talk, but because we don't know either. But it's said to be coming off the production plants in California in phenomenal numbers, and it's said to be the fastest Army Cooperation plane in service anywhere. And here's a story of the air from the other side of the world. A Pan-American plane off the west coast of Africa made a forced landing in Vichy French territory. The pilot sent out a radio message. If discovered, he and his important passengers would have been interned for the duration. But a Hudson and an ML came out to look for them on receiving the radio message, and they were rescued. Not all the thrills in wartime are connected with bullets. And here on land is the echo of another story of the sea. A gallant ship's company from His Majesty's submarine, Torbay. The CO is Commander Mears, VC. With 3 other officers and 24 ratings, he was decorated by the King. The Torbay sailed into an enemy harbor in the Mediterranean and attacked shipping, staying in patrolled waters for 17 hours. By her own choice, Malta became a part of the British Empire in 1814. They sought the aid of Admiral Nelson to eject the French, and since that time Britain has enjoyed the use of one of the finest naval bases in the world. This is a peacetime picture of the Grand Harbour at Valletta, the capital. The main street is the Strada Reale, peacetime social centre. Malta's population is devout. This is the Cathedral of St. John, named after the order of the knights whose stronghold this island was in 1530. The clock in the tower has 3 faces, telling the hour, the day of the week, and the day of the month. Outside Valletta is the old capital. This stately building is 2,600 years old, and another church, a giant building to hold a congregation of 10,000. Also near Valletta is the fashionable suburb of Floriana, beautiful and peaceful. But in 1942, the people of Malta know peace no more. They count air raids by dozens and hundreds. Bombs rain almost daily upon this little fortress in the Mediterranean. But Malta can take it as the cities of Britain took it, and Malta gives it out too. There are Spitfires and Hurricanes today, flying against the raiders whenever they come in sight. An air raid means a brief stoppage of work when things get too hot, but the deep tunnels built in the time of the Knights of St. John are ideal air raid shelters. Malta has expected air attacks ever since the sanctions brawl with Mussolini, and Malta has prepared. The air raid over, a watchman chalks up the huge score to date. When Axis convoys are crossing from Sicily to Libya, Malta gets it hot and strong. But the spirit of this tiny island remains unshaken, and the fortress still holds out as a harbor for the fleet. Two new records have been created by the Royal Air Force, both to the credit of fighter squadrons. Malta's pilots have shot down 1,000 enemy aircraft. Number 1,000 has fallen to an American commanding a Spitfire squadron, Squadron Leader Lynch. At home, another record of the same kind. Biggin Hill Fighter Station have also accounted for 1,000 enemy warplanes. Their station commander is top scorer Group Captain Milan. When the figure was 998, Squadron Leader Charles and a French pilot who must be nameless shot down 2 together.
Well, I think it was split. It's fair enough.
Fair enough.
These latest pictures from Malta show some of the work of the Fleet Air Arm, which has done such noble duty since the start of the war. Albacores being serviced and loaded up with torpedoes for attacks on enemy shipping. For Malta now is a base for attack, no longer a beleaguered fortress. These pictures come to us just after the big debate in the House of Lords and the recent speech by the First Lord of the Admiralty. Many speakers have pressed for better equipment for the aerial arm of the Royal Navy, and all will applaud that demand. The importance of the Fleet Air Arm cannot possibly be exaggerated. The finest seaborne warplanes for attack and defense can turn the scale in modern naval action. We didn't know, and Hitler didn't know, and Mussolini didn't know. But these pictures tell us now how some weeks ago these Canadians quietly embarked from ports in the British Isles and sailed for the Mediterranean. And now they are the men who helped to establish the bridgehead in Sicily, the opening of the second front in Europe. This is how they went. Nurses, too, sailed in the transports when the great convoy went out to the Middle East. There was great activity at these ports, but still their landing in Sicily was a tactical surprise. And now the African cameras show something of the preparations on that springboard to Italy, the final days of training, the toughening up to battle pitch of the world's finest army. They practice embarking and all invasion exercises until every action becomes automatic and goes without a hitch. Paratroops undergo intensive rehearsal for the forthcoming action which is now a fact in history, the descent upon Axis territory, to begin to set right the wrong that was done to Europe when German paratroops began the reign of terror. I don't know what these are doing, unless it means that Mussolini is going to have a surprise. Over to Malta. This island no longer stands beneath the shadow of bombers from Sicily. Malta has come triumphantly through the Valley of Death and strikes out day and night at the Axis stronghold. In command of the Air Vice Marshal Park. And at last, when night comes, Malta's population can sleep. The roar of mighty engines in the air does not disturb them. They're ours, out on offensive operations in the Mediterranean night. Night fighters and bombers return at the beginning of a new day, to a new Malta, refreshed by this rare blessing of unbroken sleep. At the basis from which the invasion of Europe is to begin, the men who are risking all for victory stand in prayer. Their life is concerned with essential things. A service here really means something. Familiar words suddenly achieve a splendid reality. And in the docks that the armies of the Middle East and Africa lately wrested from the Axis, invasion preparations go forward. Swiftly and secretly, the awful weight of Allied battle power is mounted for action. But even so, they haven't forgotten how to laugh. This was the eve of the descent upon the fortress of Europe. This, we pray, is the beginning of the end for Hitler. General Montgomery is in the saddle again with many units of his famous 8th Army. And these pictures were taken when he was in London a few weeks ago. Hundreds saw him and cheered him and praised him, although this film is only just released by censor. And while he was in London, when the assault on Sicily was still to come, the newsreel camera watched him sending a message to the soldiers of the 8th Army.
Before we began the Battle of Egypt last October, I said that, together, you and I, we would hit Rommel and his army for 6, right out of North Africa. Is that all right? Going too fast for you? No, sir. And it has now been done. All those well-known enemy divisions that we have fought and driven over hundreds of miles of African soil from Alamein to Tunis have now all surrendered. Your contribution to the complete and final removal of the enemy from Africa has been beyond all praise. As our Prime Minister said at Tripoli in February last, it will be a great honor to be able to say in years to come, I marched and fought with the 8th Army. And what of the future? Many of us are probably thinking of our families in the home country and wondering when we shall be able to see them. But I would say to you that we can have today only one thought, and that is to see this thing through to the end. And then we will be able to return to our families honorable men. Therefore, let us think of the future in this way. And whatever it may bring to us, I wish to each one of you the very best of luck and good hunting in the battles that are yet to come and which we will fight together. Together, you and I, we will see this thing through to the end.
This is another welcome reminder that times have changed since the days when we used to wonder where Hitler would strike next. Now the initiative is with the United Nations. This is how French troops and the gooms from the former French Empire sailed the Mediterranean in secrecy to land in Corsica. Patriots had already begun the work of expelling the Germans from this island which they had controlled since 1940. Under the terms of the armistice with France, they had tried to make it an outpost of their fortress in Europe. But the fighting French who landed were received everywhere enthusiastically, in this birthplace of another little man who tried to rule the world. Stretcher bearers figured among the Italian units which gave help against the Germans. But the Italians' value as an assistant in battle is too uncertain to be relied upon. Our late enemies have a hard path yet to tread before the fighting man will accept the sincerity of Italian friendship. Above the village of Patrimonio, the fighting French opened mortar fire on a German defense unit. Serious fighting lasted less than 3 weeks before the French command in North Africa was able to announce the reconquest of Corsica. But these pictures paint an accurate picture of the wild and open nature of the campaign. Soldiers and civilian islanders jumbled together, a lonely, desolate place, primitive to a degree. But while it remained in German hands, it had been a serious obstacle to Allied progress. Corsica reconquered, another step on the road back. The bad old days when the Germans won every battle are gone, for good, we hope. Berlin announced that all German troops had been successfully withdrawn to the Italian mainland, a masterpiece of organization. The Allies are set firmly on the way towards organizing all German troops back to Germany. Important little island in the Mediterranean. From the quiet ways of peace, with its olive groves and grapes and pomegranates, it has become a strategic center in the Middle East zone of this world war. These are the first pictures of Middle East troops embarking for Cyprus. Obviously, not many are shown here, because it is undesirable to crowd the docks with masses of troops at one time. But the great importance of Cyprus can be seen from the map. For Germany, it would be an excellent jumping-off ground for an attack on Syria or Palestine or Egypt. Now in the harbor at Famagusta, another convoy of transport and supply ships is unloading its contribution to the defense of the island, an endless stream of the countless requirements of our modern armies. Let us hope that we shall hear no more foolishness about the impossibility of a German invasion by any particular method. Let us hope, as seems to be the case, that in Cyprus the military commanders are able to prepare defense for any type of attack. It is of the utmost urgency that aerodromes should be strongly defended, both from air attack and from troops who might be on the ground. This is the effective, though rather primitive, means by which guns are hauled into position. Everywhere sandbags are being filled to build emplacements and light ack posts. And the big guns go laboriously home. Cyprus has not lost its touch of the picturesque. Indeed, the Cypriot islanders have turned to with enthusiasm to help in the building of the camp. Beside the everyday needs of an army, the more urgent work of building aerodromes goes on at full pressure. Ancient and modern join the centuries in preparing the ground for Fleet Air Arm and the RAF. Water keeps the eternal dust in check, while the rollers and levelers are working a non-stop day. No doubt many lessons have been learned from the loss of Crete. One great lesson was the vital necessity of sufficient air strength. This must never be forgotten.